What's going on? Are we live? Okay, looks like we're live. Let me get the other chat up. Good to go. All right, we finally made it, you guys. Let me know about the audio in the chat. I've been ghost in the machine type issues again. And before we get into the Éliphas Lévi tonight, it's Transmutations. And of course, at first I thought that meant alchemical transmutations, but it's more like shape-shifting, werewolves and whatnot. So I haven't read through it, just the first couple of paragraphs. Sure, it's going to be weird and interesting. Also, I want to let you guys know or mention tomorrow's stream is going to be the most significant stream that I've ever done, certainly for myself. It is a incredible story, pathetic, tragic, beautiful, mystical. We're going to get deep into self-perception, childhood trauma, all sorts of dark psychology, and outlaw tales. So basically everything that this channel has been about. I've told bits and pieces of the story before, but I never had all the pieces myself, and I still don't, but I have a significant piece. So I've decided to tell the whole story tomorrow, which makes me nervous even thinking about it. All right, let me check out the chat, make sure we're audio okay. Guys, audio's fine? All right. Transmutations, Sephora Lunae Sempiternum Auxilium. St. Augustine questioned seriously whether Apuleius could have been changed into an ass by a Thessalian sorceress, and theologians have long debated about the transformation of Nebuchadnezzar into a wild beast, which things merely prove that the eloquent doctor of Hippo was unacquainted with magical secrets, and that the theologians in question have not advanced far in exegesis, which is explanation, basically. We are concerned in this chapter with different and more incredible marvels, which are at the same time incontestable. I refer to lycanthropy, or the nocturnal transformation of men into wolves, so celebrated in rural tales of the twilight by the histories of werewolves. I'll explain that actually in a second. These histories are so well attested that with a view to their explanation, skeptical science has recourse to furious mania and masquerading as animals. But such hypotheses are puerile and explain nothing. Let us seek elsewhere for the secret of the phenomena which have been observed on this subject, and begin with establishing, 1, that no one has ever been killed by a werewolf except by suffocation, without effusion of blood and without wounds. That werewolves, though tracked, pursued, and even wounded, have never been killed on the spot. That persons suspected of these transformations have always been found at home after a werewolf chase, more or less maimed, sometimes dying, but invariably in their natural form. Let me check this audio. Hello. Okay. So the reality is this. Lycanthropy is actually caused by certain tropane alkaloids that reside in the leaves of potatoes, for example. They're not hallucinogenic on their own, but during the potato famine in Ireland, the blight killed I guess it's a blight, a fungus, whatever it was, killed the potato, the tuber, but it didn't harm the leaves, so people were starving and they just ate the potato leaves. And so when you do that, you have dreams that can involve somnambulism, so sleepwalking, where you think you're a predatory animal, usually a wolf. This is a real thing. So this lycanthropy that he's talking about, I don't know what his explanation is going to be, but that's probably the real, actual, and true explanation. So, let us next establish phenomena of a different order. Nothing in the world is better borne out by evidence than the visible and real presence of P. Alphonsus Liguori beside the dying pope, whilst the same personage was simultaneously seen at home, far from Rome, in prayer and ecstasy. Further, the simultaneous presence of the missionary Francis Javier in several places at one time has been no less strictly demonstrated. It will be said that these are miracles, but we reply that miracles, when they are genuine, are simply facts for science. Apparitions of persons dear to us, coincident with the moment of their death, are phenomena of the same order and attributable to the same cause. We have spoken of the sidereal body, which is intermediary between the soul and the physical body. Now, this body frequently remains awake while the latter sleeps and passes through all space which universal magnetization opens to it. It lengthens without breaking the sympathetic chain which attaches it to our heart and brain. And it is for this reason that it is so dangerous to awaken dreams suddenly. As a fact, too great a start may break the chain in an instant and cause death immediately. The form of our sidereal body is conformed to the habitual condition of our thoughts, and it modifies in the long run the characteristics of the material body. This is why Swedenborg, in his somnambulistic intuitions, frequently beheld spirits in the shape of various animals. This would also be why, in my opinion, you actually can judge a book by its cover. We're told not to judge people by their appearances, right? And to an extent, that's true. Like, it's a man with long hair, or they have tattoos, or whatever. That's not what I'm talking about. It's something more subtle. But, you can see who a person is, because our thoughts are manifest in our form, Animals are like this, too. The form of a tiger is tiger. The essence of the being is expressed succinctly in its form. Let us now make bold to say that a werewolf is nothing else but the sidereal body of a man whose savage and sanguinary instincts are typified by the wolf, who further, whilst his phantom wanders over the country, is sleeping painfully in his bed and dreams that he is actually a wolf. What makes the werewolf visible is the almost somnambulistic excitement caused by the fright of those who behold it, or else the tendency, more particularly in simple country persons, to enter into direct communication with the astral light, which is the common medium of visions and dreams. The hurts inflicted on the werewolf really wound the sleeping person by the odic and sympathetic congestion of the astral light and by the correspondence of the immaterial with the material body. Many persons will believe that they are dreaming when they read such things as these, and will ask whether we are really ourselves awake, but we will only request men of science to reflect upon the phenomena of gestation and upon the influence of the imagination of women on the form of their offspring. A woman who had been present at the execution of a man who was broken upon a wheel gave birth to a child with its limbs shattered. Let anyone explain to us how the impression produced upon the soul of the mother by a horrible spectacle could so have reacted on the child, and we in turn will explain why blows received in dreams can really bruise and even grievously wound the body of him who receives them in imagination. Above all, when his body is suffering and subjected to nervous and magnetic influences. To these phenomena, and to the occult laws which govern them, must be referred the effects of bewitchment, of which we will speak hereafter. Diabolical obsessions and the majority of nervous diseases which affect the brain are wounds inflicted on the nervous mechanism by the astral light when perverted, that is, absorbed or projected in abnormal proportions. All extraordinary and extranatural tensions of the will predisposed to obsessions and nervous diseases. Enforced celibacy, asceticism, hatred, ambition, rejected love are so many generative principles of infernal forms and influences. Paracelsus says that the menstruations of women beget phantoms in the air, and from this standpoint, convents would be seminaries for nightmares, while the devils might be compared to those heads of the Hydra of Lerne, which were reproduced eternally and propagated in the very blood from their wounds. The phenomena of possession amongst the Ursulines of London, so fatal to urban grandier, have been misconstrued. The nuns were really possessed by hysteria and fanatical imitation of the secret thoughts of their exorcists, which were transmitted to their nervous system by the astral light. Now, I'm sure you guys have been picking up on this, but this is a book of magic from the 1800s. And he is explaining in rational terms all of these supposed superstitions that these silly, ancient, uneducated magicians were supposed to be possessed of. So it's a really important thing to take note on how the perception of people has been sort of twisted in regards to these things, to the extent that most people wouldn't even look to find out that that's not the reality. And the damage done by that is tremendous, because people would be empowered and liberated by the kind of knowledge that's represented here, and also superstitions that are very damaging and at the very least unproductive, because they have no foundation in reality. Those would be diminished because these phenomena would be properly understood in the light of initiation and adepthood. So, they received the impression of all the hatreds which this unfortunate priest had conjured up against him, and this holy interior communication seemed diabolical and miraculous to themselves. Hence, to this tragical affair, everyone acted sincerely, even to Labourdemont, who, in his blind execution of the prejudged verdicts of Cardinal Richelieu, believed that he was fulfilling at the same time the duties of a true judge, and as little suspected himself of being a follower of Pontius Pilate as he would have recognized in the skeptical and libertine curé of Saint Pierre de Morue, a disciple and martyr of Christ. I have no idea what he's talking about. I think a lot of these things are contemporary, things that were happening at the time, and the assumption is that we would all know the context, and I certainly do not. The possession of the Luns of Louviers is scarcely more than a copy of those of Loudon. The devils invent little and plagiarize one another. The process of Goffridi and Magdalene de la Palude possesses stranger features, for in this case the victims are their own accusers. Goffridi confessed that he was guilty of depriving a number of women of the power to defend themselves against his seductions by simply breathing in their nostrils. A young and beautiful girl of noble family who had been thus insufflated described in the greatest detail scenes wherein the unchaste seemed to vie with the monstrous and grotesque. Such are the ordinary hallucinations of false mysticism and ill-kept celibacy. Goffridi and his mistress were obsessed by their mutual chimeras, and the brain of the one reflected the nightmares of the other. Was not the Marquis of Sade himself infectious for certain depleted and diseased natures? I guess he was. The scandalous trial of Father Gerard is a new proof of the deliriums of mysticism and the singular nervous affections which it may entail. The trances of La Cadier, her ecstasies, her stigmatas, were all as real as the insensate and perhaps involuntary debauchery of her director. She accused him when he wished to withdraw from her, and the conversion of this young woman was a revenge, for there is nothing more cruel than depraved passions. An influential body which intervened in the trial of Grandier for the destruction of the possible heretic, in the case rescued Father Gerard for the honor of the order. Moreover, Grandier and Gerard attained the same results by very different means, with which we shall be specially concerned in the 16th chapter. We operate by our imagination on the imagination of others, by our sidereal body on theirs, by our organs on their organs, in such a way that by sympathy, whether or of inclination or obsession, we reciprocally possess one another and identify ourselves with those upon whom we wish to act. Reactions against such dominations frequently cause the most profound antipathy to succeed the keenest sympathy. Love has a tendency to unify beings. In thus identifying, it frequently renders them rivals. and consequently enemies, if in the depth of the two natures there is an unsociable disposition like pride. To permeate two united souls in an equal degree with pride is to disjoin them by making them rivals. Antagonism is the necessary consequence of a plurality of gods. Check in with the chat real quick, and I'll do some elucidation and pontification for your edification and amusement. Are we having glitching or anything? Because I'm still getting this error message and everything is set correctly. So I hope everything's all good there. Okay, so where were we with this? We operate by our imagination on the imagination of others. One of the most profound and powerful ways that this occurs is through music. Anyone that's ever been to an ayahuasca ceremony knows that the principal tool of the shaman is manipulating the energy or the consciousness of the people in attendance in the space using sound, right? And actually, the style of music that I play has a very similar purpose. It is a sort of collective improvisation with the goal of entering into a universal mind state, a collective mind state with the audience. And actually, once I was leaving a show and a girl stopped the bass player and I and said, "Can I tell you what you taught me about music tonight?" And she went on to describe how, once this unified mind is established, she didn't have the word entrainment to use for this, or, she hadn't made that connection, so I'm modifying that. But she said that everyone rises to the consciousness of whoever's highest in the room. It doesn't necessarily have to be the band. It's not like the musicians are necessarily even the focal point for this. If there's a Buddha in the audience, then it's going to entrain with that person. And it was really quite a remarkable thing to hear, because I had come to this conclusion from attending Grateful Dead member concerts. I realized that the people in the audience had all received the same message from the music, but it's not in the lyrics. And that was the first major indication I had that that was a thing. And so, we weren't playing Grateful Dead music even, but I had this objective in mind, so to have this girl with the Misfits tattoo and not part of that culture at all come up and explained it, that she had realized this was happening, was a great validation. So yeah, that's one aspect of it. The more negative side is that when we have a cultural precedent, or a set of them that are not productive, it's very difficult for people to escape, because the influence that we have on each other is much deeper than what we articulate. And so this is one of the reasons that it's so important for people to develop an understanding of this kind of knowledge and to understand how the magnetism of consciousness works and how to develop yourself as a truly sovereign individual. When you guys hear my story tomorrow night, my mother's influence on me had horrific consequences, because I had not fully formulated my own magnetic field and, established that boundary, I guess. Lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram is your number one go-to tool for this, by the way. When we dream of a living person, either their sidereal body presents itself to ours in the astral light, or at least the reflection thereof, and our impressions at the meeting often make known the secret dispositions of the person in our regard. For example, love fashions the sidereal body of the one in the image and likeness of the other, so that the cycle medium of the woman is like a man, and that of the man like a woman. It was this transfer which the Kabbalists sought to express in an occult manner when they said, in explanation of an obscure term in Genesis, God created love by placing a rib of Adam in the breast of the woman and a portion of the flesh of Eve in the breast of the man, so that at the bottom of woman's heart there is the bone of man, while at the bottom of man's heart there is the flesh of woman. An allegory which is certainly not devoid of depth and beauty. We have referred in the previous chapter to what the masters in Kabbalah call the embryonic condition of souls. This state, completed after the death of the person who thereby possesses another, is often commenced in life, whether by obsession or by love. I knew a young woman whose parents inspired her with a great terror, who took suddenly to inflicting upon an inoffensive person the very acts she dreaded in them. I knew another who, after participating in an evocation concerned with a guilty woman suffering in the next world for certain eccentric acts, began to imitate, without any reason, the actions of the dead person. To this occult power must be attributed the terrible influence resident in parental malediction, which is feared by all nations on earth, as also the imminent danger of magical operations when anyone has not reached the isolation of true adepts. Damn, that is what I just said. That's crazy. Just echoed. That is wild. But yeah, that's parental malediction. That's a great way to put it. Parental malediction, and when you have not reached the isolation of true adepts, your field is still too permeable. It's a tremendous crisis when you develop, as I did, the capacity to. I mean, at this point, I'm not sure what it was. It was either my will was basically executing whatever I thought of almost instantly, or there's a God. I haven't really made up my mind exactly which, or maybe it's both. But the point being, if you get to that point of connectivity and you haven't dealt with these shadow aspects sufficiently, it's literally like being in hell, because you basically have your dreams and your true purpose in life beating down your door, and you cannot accept it. So rich too young, wise too late, or you could say enthusiasm that isn't sufficiently tempered by wisdom, you'd be better off with nothing at all. The virtue of sidereal transmutation, which really exists in love, explains the allegorical marvels of the wand of Circe. Apuleius speaks of a Thessalian woman who changed herself into a bird. He won the affections of her servant to discover the secrets of the mistress, and succeeded only in transforming himself into an ass. This allegory contains the most concealed secrets of love. Again, the Kabbalists say that when a man falls in love with a female elementary, an undine, sylphide, or nomide, as the case may be, she becomes immortal with him, or otherwise he dies with her. We have already seen that elementaries are imperfect and as yet mortal men. The revelation we have mentioned, which has been regarded merely as a fable, is therefore the dogma of moral solidarity in love, which is itself the foundation of love and alone explains all its sanctity and all its power. Who then is this Circe that changes her worshippers into swine, while so soon as she is subjected to the bond of love, her enchantments are destroyed? She is the ancient courtesan, the marble woman of all the ages. A woman who is without love absorbs and degrades all who come near her. She who loves, on the other hand, diffuses enthusiasm, nobility, and life. What he was saying about the elementaries having this sort of codependency when they are attached to a person. I've had a theory about these DMT entities and other types of spirits that they don't objectively exist, but they're not unreal either. But the way that we perceive them and their sort of the subjective existence in that sense, as it relates to us, is actually the vector of our consciousness and the electromagnetic field and the sort of archetypal energies that reside in the 0 point field, basically. So they don't exist without us, but they don't not exist either, if that makes sense. There was much talk in the last century about an adept accused of charlatanism, who was termed in his lifetime the divine Cagliostro. Levi Crowley claimed to be the reincarnation of Éliphas Lévi and Cagliostro. So this is like a chain of incarnations, allegedly. It is known that he practiced evocations. and that in this art he was surpassed only by the illuminated Schrofer. The hell is that? It is said also that he boasted of his power in binding sympathies, and that he claimed to be in possession of the secret of the great work. But that which rendered him still more famous was a certain elixir of life, my God, which immediately restored to the aged the strength and vitality of youth. The basis of this composition was Malvois wine, and it was obtained by distilling the sperm of certain animals with the sap of certain plants. I knew it. We are in possession of the recipe, but our reasons for withholding it will be readily understood. Okay, one of the things Crowley was famous for was sympathetic magic, where he would trip and he would point at somebody across the street, and he would trip, and then they would trip. What was another thing here? That possession of the secret of the great work. Of course, he claimed that. But he was going to start a resort where they served the Amrita, he called it, which was an elixir of life that was made of semen and menstrual blood. And so they were going to serve this as like a, I mean, you know, but it's the same story here. Yeah. Our reasons for withholding it will be readily understood. Yep. They're understood. All right. Gross. Oh, really? Are we already done with transmutations? Alrighty then. Well, I'll check in with the chat real quickity quick. See how you guys are doing. Hello. It's all working. That's weird. I don't know why I'm getting these error messages. Kind of annoying. All right. Well, let's do at least one more chapter. I have got to kind of save my energy for tomorrow night because it's going to be like 5 or 6 hour stream probably. I'm going to tell the entire story, and it's going to go back to my childhood even, because it's like this one thing that was building up for all of these years, and it met a unfortunate fate, but we're picking the story back up. That's kind of the point. So make sure you join us tomorrow. Bring your friends. Black Magic. Samael Auxiliator. We approach the mystery of black magic. We are about to confront, even in his own sanctuary, the black god of the Sabbath, the formidable goat of Mendes. At this point, those who are subject to fear should close the book. Even persons who are prey to nervous impressions will do well to divert themselves or to abstain. We have set ourselves a task, and we must complete it. Let us first of all address ourselves frankly and boldly to the question, is there a devil? What is the devil? As to the first point, science is silent. Philosophy denies it on chance, and religion only answers in the affirmative. As to the second point, religion states that the devil is a fallen angel. Occult philosophy accepts and explains this definition. It will be unnecessary to repeat what we have already said on the subject. We will add here a further revelation. Is black magic the devil? In black magic, the devil is the great magical agent employed for evil purposes at a perverse will. By a perverse will. The old serpent of the legend is nothing else than the universal agent. Oh, go back and watch my Lucifer video, because that was just my theory, man. That was just my theory. That's so crazy to see that there. Basically, you know, let me see if I can explain this again. It's been a while since I've even thought about it, but the light bearer is an electromagnetic wave, right? And so in the beginning, if the Kabbalists have this correct, there was an absolute nothingness. And basically it had a thought, and it realized that it was there. Hey, I am that I am. And this is a problem, because now there are two things, and the only possible unity is nothingness. This is how paradox also became ingrained in the structure of everything. This is why everything contains its contradiction, because it's all a process of replication by means of reflection. And so this oscillating wave imparts symmetry upon the chaotic primordial stew of energy and molecules, right? And because it moved against nothingness, it rebelled against God, and it became heavy in matter as things condensed, and it fell and coagulated into matter. So the light bearer is just a sinusoidal wave. And that is also what the universal agent is, the eternal fire of terrestrial life, the soul of the earth, and a living fount of hell, the sun, Helios. Damn, man. We have said that the astral light is the receptacle of forms, and these, when evoked by reason, are produced harmoniously. But when evoked by madness, they appear disorderly and monstrous. So originated the nightmares of St. Anthony and the phantoms of the Sabbath. Do, therefore, the evocations of Goethe and Demonomania possess a practical result? Yes, certainly. One which cannot be contested, one more terrible than could be recounted by legends. When anyone invokes the devil with intentional ceremonies, the devil comes and is seen. I swear to God, in our Discord group for patrons, if you're not a patron, you should become a patron because it is a good place to be. And I need your support in order to continue providing this wonderful content. You can make one-time contributions through the options in the chat and also in every video. And if you join the Patreon at the $10 tier or higher, you get access to the Discord and all of the secret streams for 7 years or something. 7 years now of premium material. Right. So, but what I was saying is in the Discord, one of us is Baphomet. And every time in the last 3 weeks, somebody's mentioned the devil, Baphomet has appeared in the chat instantly. All 3 times. Really trippy. To escape dying from horror at the sight, to escape catalepsy or idiocy, one must be already mad. Grandier was a libertine through indevotion, and perhaps also through skepticism, excessive zeal, following on the aberrations of asceticism and blindness of faith, depraved Gerard, and made him deprave in his turn. In the 15th chapter of our ritual, we shall give all the diabolical evocations and practices of black magic, not that they may be used, but that they may be known and judged, and that such insanities may be put aside forever. M. Udes de Mervel, whose book Upon Table Turning made a certain sensation recently, will possibly be contented and discontented at the same time with the solution here given of black magic and its problems. As a fact, we maintain, like himself, the reality and prodigious nature of facts. With him also we assign them to the old serpent, the secret prince of this world. But we are not agreed as to the nature of this blind agent, which, under different directions, is at once the instrument of all good and of all evil. That's what's up. The minister of prophets and the inspirer of Pythonesses. In a word, the devil for us is force placed temporarily at the disposal of error. Force placed temporarily at the disposal of error. Even as mortal sin is, to our thinking, the persistence of the will in that which is absurd. M. de Mervel is therefore 1,000 times right, but he is once and one great time wrong. What we must exclude above all from the realm of existences is the arbitrary. Nothing happens by chance, nor yet by the autocracy of a good or evil will. There are 2 houses in heaven, and the lower house of Satan is restrained in its extremes by the senate of divine wisdom. Damn, that was gangster. All right, let me check in with the chat, and maybe we'll do one more chapter. See if we got any questions, comments, or... Man, I cannot believe we're losing folks when that shit was that good. They're lost, guys. That shit was gangster. All right, so where are we at now? Bewitchments. Fons oculus fulgur. When a man gazes unchastely upon any woman, he profanes that woman, said the great master. What is willed with persistence is done. Shit. Every real will is confirmed by acts. Every will confirmed by an act is an action. Every action is subject to a judgment, and such judgment is eternal. These are dogmas and principles from which it follows that the good or evil which we will to others as to ourselves, according to the capacity of our will and within the sphere of our action, will infallibly take place if the will be confirmed and the determination fixed by acts. I can tell you, you'll see tomorrow night, like how true that is. If you take my story to be true. The acts should be analogous to the will. The intent to do harm or to excite love, in order to be efficacious, must be confirmed by deeds of hatred or affection. Whatsoever bears the impression of a human soul belongs to that soul. Whatsoever a man has appropriated after any manner becomes his body, in the broader acceptation of the term. And anything which is done to the body of a man is felt immediately by his soul. It is for this reason that every species of hostilities towards one's neighbor is regarded by moral theology as the beginning of homicide. Bewitchment is a homicide, and the more infamous because it eludes self-defense by the victim and punishment by law. This principle being established to exonerate our conscience and for the warning of the weak vessels, let us affirm boldly that bewitchment is possible. Let us even go further and lay down that it is not only possible, but in some sense necessary and fatal. It is continually going on in the social world, unconsciously, both to agents and patients. Involuntary bewitchment is one of the most terrible dangers of human life. Passional sympathy inevitably subjects the hottest desire to the strongest will. Moral maladies are more contagious than physical, and there are some triumphs of infatuation and fashion which are comparable to leprosy or cholera. We may die of an evil acquaintance as well as of a contagious touch, and the frightful plague which during recent centuries only has avenged in Europe the profanation of the mysteries of love is a revelation of the analogical laws of nature, and at the same time offers only a feeble image of the moral corruptions which follow daily on an equivocal sympathy. There is a story of a jealous and infamous man who, to avenge himself on a rival, contracted an incurable disorder and made it the common scourge and anathema of a divided bed. This atrocious history is that of every magician, or rather of every sorcerer who practiced bewitchment. He poisons himself in order that he may poison others. He damns himself that he may torture others. He draws in hell with his breath in order that he may expel it by his breath. He wounds himself to death that he may inflict death on others. But possessed of this unhappy courage, it is positive and certain that he will poison and slay by the mere projection of his perverse will. There are some forms of love which are as deadly as hatred, and the bewitchments of goodwill are the torment of the wicked. The prayers offered to God for the conversion of a man bring misfortune to that man if he will not be converted. As we have already said, it is weariness and danger to strive against the fluidic currents occasioned by the chains of wills in union. Hence, there are two kinds of bewitchment, voluntary and involuntary. Physical and moral bewitchment may be also distinguished. Power attracts power, life attracts life, health attracts health. This is a law of nature. If two children live, above all, if they sleep together, and if one be weak while the other is strong, the strong will absorb the weak, and the latter will waste away. For this reason, it is important that children should always sleep alone. In conventional seminaries, certain pupils absorb the intelligence of the others, and in every given circle of men, an individual speedily appears who avails himself of the wills of the rest. Bewitchment by means of currents is exceedingly common. As we have already observed, morally as well as physically, most of us are carried away by the crowd. What, however, we have proposed to exhibit more especially in this chapter is the almost absolute power of the human will upon the determination of its acts and the influence of every outward demonstration upon outward things. Voluntary bewitchments are still frequent in our rural places because natural forces among ignorant and isolated persons operate without being diminished by any doubt or any diversion. A frank, absolute hatred, unleavened by rejected passion or personal cupidity, is under certain given conditions a death sentence for its object. I say unmixed with amorous passion or cupidity because a desire, being an attraction, counterbalances and annuls the power of projection. Pure will, unassuaged of lust of result, is in every way perfect. Purity. For example, a jealous person will never efficaciously bewitch his rival, and a greedy heir will never, by the mere fact of his will, succeed in shortening the days of a miserly and long-lived uncle. Bewitchments attempted under such conditions reflect upon the operator and help rather than hurt their object, setting him free from a hostile action which destroys itself by excessive exaggeration. This is why there are almost no truly dangerous black magicians. The term, because if you are predisposed to that kind of behavior, you're probably going to be compromised in your magnetic influence by jealousy and all of these sort of dissonance patterns that are going to interfere with the efficacy of your will. The term bewitchment, involteme, so strong in its Gaelic simplicity and admirably expresses what it means. The act of enveloping someone, so to speak, in a formulated will. The instrument of bewitchments is the great magical agent which, under the influence of an evil will, becomes really and positively the demon. Witchcraft, properly so called, that is, ceremonial operation with intent to bewitch, acts only on the operator and serves to fix and confirm his will. By formulating it with persistence and labor, the two conditions which make volition efficacious. The more difficult or horrible the operation, the greater is its power, because it acts more strongly on the imagination and confirms effort and direct ratio of resistance. Confirms effort and direct ratio of resistance. This is why somebody in the Discord the other day brought up the Tesseract ritual, which is extremely difficult and long. And the objective of the original was to destroy the entire universe. We are not sure if that person succeeded or not. But there's a microcosmic version that is about basically ego death on an atomic level. And the efficacy of this ritual is as he described. It is so long and difficult because your effort, direct ratio of resistance with the, pain in the acidness of the whole operation. This explains the bizarre nature and even atrocious character of the operations in black magic as practiced by the ancients and in the Middle Ages. The diabolical masses, administration of sacraments to reptiles, effusions of blood, human sacrifices, and other monstrosities, which are the very essence and reality of Goetia or negromancy. Such are the practices which from all time have brought down upon sorcerers the just repression of the laws. Black magic is really only a graduated combination of sacrileges and murders designed for the permanent perversion of a human will and for the realization in a living man of the hideous phantom of the demon. It is, therefore, properly speaking, the religion of the devil, the cultus of darkness, hatred of good, carried to the height of paroxysm. It is the incarnation of death and the persistent creation of hell. The Kabbalist Bodin, who has been erroneously considered of a feeble and superstitious mind, had no other motive in writing his Demonomania than that of warning people against dangerous incredulity. Initiated by the study of the Kabbalah into the true secrets of magic, he trembled at the danger to which society was exposed by the abandonment of this power to the wickedness of men. Hence he attempted what at the present time M. Udes de Mervel is attempting amongst ourselves. He gathered facts without interpreting them and affirmed in the face of inattentive or preoccupied science the existence of the occult influences and criminal operations of evil magic. In his own day, Bodin received no more attention than will be given to Merville because it is not enough to indicate phenomena to prejudge their cause if we would influence earnest men. We must study, explain, and demonstrate such cause, and this is precisely what we are ourselves attempting. Will better success crown our own efforts? I sure the hell hope so. Is it possible to die through the love of certain people as by their hate? There are absorbing passions under the breath of which we feel ourselves depleted like the spouses of vampires. Not only do the wicked torment the good, but unconsciously the good torture the wicked. The gentleness of Abel was a long and painful bewitchment for the ferocity of Cain. Among evil men, the hatred of good originates in the very instinct of self-preservation. Moreover, they deny that what torments them is good, and for their own peace are driven to deify and justify evil. In the sight of Cain, Abel was a hypocrite and coward who abused the pride of humanity by his scandalous submissions to divinity. How much must this first murderer have endured before making such a frightful attack upon his brother? Had Abel understood, he would have been afraid. Antipathy is the presentiment of a possible bewitchment, either of love or hatred, for we find love frequently succeeding repulsion. The astral light warns us of coming influences by its action on the more or less sensible, more or less active nervous system. Instantaneous sympathies, electric loves are explosions of the astral light, which are exactly and mathematically demonstrable as the discharge of strong magnetic batteries. Thereby, we may see what unexpected dangers threaten an uninitiated person who is perpetually fooling with fire in the neighborhood of invisible powder mines. We are saturated with the astral light, and we project it unceasingly to make room for and to attract fresh supplies. The nervous instruments, which are specially designed either for attraction or projection, are the eyes and the hands. The polarity of the hands is resident in the thumb, and hence, according to the magical tradition which still lingers in rural places, whenever anyone is in suspicious company, he should keep the thumb doubled up and hidden in the hand, and while in the main avoiding a fixed glance at anyone, still being the first to look at those whom we have reason to fear, so as to escape unexpected fluidic projections and fascinating regards. There are certain animals which have the power of breaking the currents of astral light by an absorption peculiar to themselves. They are violently antipathetic to us and possess a certain sorcery to the eye. The toad, the basilisk, and the tard are instances. These animals, when tamed and carried alive on the person or kept in occupied rooms, are a guarantee against the hallucinations and trickeries of astral intoxication, a term we make use of here for the first time, one which explains all the phenomena of unbridled passions, mental exaltations, and folly. And the reason for this would be just that they have some sort of magnetic disposition, that represents an interference pattern. Whether this is true or not, I can't tell you, but that's the theory behind the practice. Tame toads and tards. What is a tard? Tame toads and tards, my dear sir, the disciple of Voltaire will say to me, carry them about with you and write no more. To which I may answer that I shall seriously think of doing so as soon as I ever feel tempted to laugh at anything I do not understand, and to treat those whose knowledge and wisdom I fail to understand as fools or as madmen. Thank you, Mr. Levi. Paracelsus, the greatest of the Christian magi's, opposed bewitchment by the practices of a contrary bewitchment. He composed sympathetic remedies and applied them, not to the suffering members, but to representations of those members, formed and consecrated according to magical ceremonial. His successes were incredible, and never has any physician approached Paracelsus in his marvels of healing. The way that would work, actually, too, has to do with holography. The UAPs, if the congressional testimony is to be taken at face value, the way that they move, nothing could withstand the G-forces. It doesn't. Nothing. If they were made of solid metal, it would. There's one explanation, and that is that they are basically already everywhere at once, and when they choose a perspective, then that's where they are. So that kind of holographic nature of reality is what this idea of, like the voodoo dolls and the influence of the individual on them has to do with the electromagnetic field. And we will get deeply into this process at a later date. But Paracelsus had discovered magnetism long before Mesmer, and had carried to its final consequences this luminous discovery, or rather this initiation into the magic of the ancients, who better than us understood the great magical agent and did not regard the astral light, azot, the universal magnesia of the sages, as an animal and a special fluid emanating only from particular creatures. In his occult philosophy, Paracelsus opposes ceremonial magic, the terrible power of which he certainly did not ignore, but he sought to decry its practices so as to discredit black magic, throw the baby out with the bathwater. He locates the omnipotence of the Magnus in the interior and occult magnes, and the most skillful magnetizers of our own day could not express themselves better. At the same time, he counseled the employment of magical symbols, talisman above all, in the cure of diseases. In our 18th chapter, we shall have occasion to return to the talismans, Paracelsus, while following Gaffarel upon the great question of occult iconography and numismatics. Bewitchment may also be cured by substitution, when that is possible, and by the rupture or deflection of the astral current. The rural traditions on all these points are admirable, and undoubtedly of remote antiquity, they are remnants of the instructions of the Druids, who were initiated in the mysteries of Egypt and India by wandering hierophants. Now, it is well known in vulgar magic, that is a fucking big spider, speaking of animals. God, I don't like it very much. Where was I? It is well known in vulgar magic that a bewitchment, that is a will, persistently confirmed in ill doing, invariable has its results and cannot draw back without risk of death. Something just dawned on me that is wild, man. A person who had a completely and entirely parasitic relationship with me, once I was completely severed that, they died almost immediately. I never really thought about that. As if it was their sole purpose or something, you know. The sorcerer who liberates anyone from a charm must have another object for his malevolent ill-doing. Wait, what's going on here? For his malevolent ill-doing invariably has its result and cannot draw. That's weird. Malevolence should end here. They got the sentences out of order. Okay, sorry. That's just weird. I don't understand how the printing could go awry like that. The astral movement being circular, every azotic or magnetic emission which does not encounter its medium returns with force to its point of departure. That of the demons sent into the swine, which thereupon cast themselves into the sea. This act of high initiation was nothing else but the rupture of a magnetic current infected by evil wills. Our name is Legion, for we are many, said the instinctive voice of the possessed sufferer. Possessions by the demon are bewitchments, and such cases are innumerable at the present day. A holy monk who has devoted himself in the service of the insane, Brother Hilarion Tissot, has succeeded by a long experience and incessant practice in curing a number of patients by unconsciously using the magnetism of Paracelsus. He attributes most of his cases either to disorder of the will or to the perverse influence of external wills. He regards all crimes as acts of madness and would treat the wicked as diseased instead of exasperating and making them incurable under the pretense of punishing them. That's evolution. What space of time must still elapse ere poor brother Hilarion Tissot shall be hailed as a man of genius? Really? And how many serious men, when they read this chapter, will say that Tissot and myself should treat one another according to our own common ideas, but should refrain from publishing our theories if we do not wish to be reckoned as physicians worthy of a hospital for incurables? It revolves, notwithstanding, said Galileo, stamping his foot upon the earth. Echo his madness. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free, said the Savior of men. You shall know the truth, and it will piss you off, said the Illuminostic of men. It might also be added, you shall love justice, and justice shall make you whole, men. A vice is a poison, even for the body. True virtue is a pledge of longevity. The method of ceremonial bewitchments varies with times and persons. All subtle and domineering people find its secrets and its practice within themselves without even actually calculating about them or reasoning on their sequence. Herein, they follow instinctive inspirations of the great agent, which, as we have already said, accommodates itself marvelously to our vices and to our virtues. It may, however, be generally laid down that we are subjected to the wills of others by the analogies of our tendencies and, above all, of our faults. Toxic relationships. That's the simple one. To pamper the weaknesses of an individual is to possess ourselves of that individuality and convert it into an instrument in the order of the same errors or depravities. Now, when two natures whose effects are analogous become subordinated one to another. The result is a sort of substitution of the stronger for the weaker, an actual obsession of one mind by the other. Very often the weaker may struggle and seek to revolt, but it only falls deeper in servitude. So did Louis XIII conspire against Richelieu, and subsequently, so to speak, sought his pardon by abandoning his accomplices. We have all a ruling defect, which is for our soul as the umbilical cord of its sinful birth. I must clear away this umbilical residue keeping me from killing you. And it is by this the enemy can always seize us, for some vanity, for some idleness, for the majority egotism. Let a wicked and crafty mind avail itself of this snare, and we are lost. We may not go mad or turn idiots, but we will become positively alienated in all the force of the expression. That is, we are subjected to a foreign impulsion. In such a state, one dreads instinctively everything that might bring us back to reason, and will not even listen to representations that are opposed to our infatuation. Here is one of the most dangerous disorders which can affect the moral nature, and you see this in politics as the fundamental thing. Both sides of the aisle, anything that, oh my God, they're at exact two giant spiders at exactly the same height on each side of the door. That is weird. They're exactly level on each side of the doorway. Fucking hell, man. How many of them are there in here? We have these giant house spiders here. There seem to be quite a few of them lurking around at the moment. But yeah, that's a great example of this. No matter how much evidence is presented that's contrary to the delusions that they have, it's just not there. Endeavor, for example, to cure an ambitious person by making him desire the glories of heaven. Mystic remedy, cure one who is dissolute by true love. Natural remedy, obtain honorable successes for a vain person. Exhibit unselfishness to the avaricious, and procure for them legitimate profit by honorable participation in general enterprises. Acting in this way upon the moral nature, we may succeed in curing a number of physical maladies, for the moral affects the physical in virtue of the magical axiom, that which is above is like that which is below. This is why the master said when speaking of a paralyzed woman, Satan has bound her. A disease invariably originates in a deficiency or an excess, and even at the root of a physical evil, we shall find a moral disorder. This is an unchanging law of nature. Damn, it's a good book. Hold on, guys. I think I have a banana over there, and I'm absolutely famished. So I'll jump in the chat for a minute, see if you guys want to have a quick chat. And yeah, I got to get a banana though. I'm starving. What am I doing here? This one goes there. Go you there. Mm-hmm. All right, let me go check for that banana. I'll be right back with you. That's better. Check. Oh, it was a little quiet, wasn't it? You guys should have told me. Looks like it was kind of quiet. Hello. It's a little better, probably. Whoa, too much. All right, so here's the chat, and you guys have anything for me? Because I did grab the banana, but I don't see any questions or. But I have some potato chips, so I will eat some potato chips and wait. If you guys have anything to throw out there, Otherwise, I'm determined to do a music stream on Friday, and I keep deciding that I'm not prepared for it and putting it off, but I'm not going to put it off again. So tonight, I'm going to work on that a bunch. It's crazy how relevant. I'm expecting that at this point, but how relevant to the situation a lot of what we read in the book is. Really incredible how much evidence, I guess, I've seen in favor of certain things that I was looking back, my inability to accept it is mind blowing. Like if I even try to think about it, I'm just going to end up stuttering and stammering like that. All right. So we have no questions or subjects. So is Golden Dawn the best place to start? Well, it depends on your objective. If you're talking about the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, that's where I first took an initiation in the Stellium Matutina lineage, Israel Reggerty, and supposedly it was an offshoot of the original. Otherwise, it couldn't be a legit lineage, and it was. So Crowley and Mathers, and there's another order that's run by what the fuck, David Griffin. Or Griffith, I can't remember which, Griffith or Griffin. I don't know if that's a good idea. I do like that they mix the Lemic ideas in with the curriculum. But, the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn is basically the right-hand path version of the Lema. It's a Hermetic order, and, they teach Kabbalah and the various aspects of the sciences of the Magi, but I'm not a huge fan of Mathers, and Christianity in general. So I feel like there are better ways to go about it. Really, just self-initiation. Maybe working with a single individual that can help guide you if you get yourself into Chapel Perilous and get lost, which is gonna happen. It's definitely gonna happen. Chapel Perilous is basically the Robert Anton Wilson's term for what I call the Phoenix process, that experience of the Phoenix process. And it's extremely difficult because what's happening is your entire consciousness is like expanding simultaneously and integrating, right? So your filter is down. So you're having precognitions, contact experiences are common. You are able to, like, pretty much, I was at least, pretty much will anything that it would just happen within a week or, but if you haven't gone through a very effective process of shadow integration and, analysis and really neutralized all your demons and stuff, it's just going to be a shit show. And there's the very real danger of madness that you don't recover from. Some element of madness is essential because the breaking down of order in order to allow the new order to emerge is just the formula of creation, just how it works. I'm always on the fence about whether it's good to join an order and have some guidance, because you don't really know the constitution of the people in the order. You don't really know what's going on until you're in there too deep. And then in the case of self-initiation, there's nobody to keep you from, not navigating things well at the very best. So that's a really tough thing to prescribe. There are people out there that can be trusted that have achieved high levels of illumination and adepthood. So you just, if you feel you need guidance, you have to identify one of those people and ask them for it. Generally, you will receive it, unless it's a black brother, and then you don't want it. So that's what's up. Do we have any more questions or comments or topics? Could a teacher be willed, like with the I don't know that it is a matter of willing a teacher exactly. I think that it's more like you're going to have that intersection at the moment that it's appropriate, you know. Once you have sort of aligned yourself with the current, all of these things are organic, you know. It's a combination of aligning the individual micro will with the macro will. You know, in my case, the story I'm going to tell tomorrow night, you know, the chances of it happening the way that it happened by chance are beyond zero, you know. And the reason that I was catapulted, or part of the reason that I was catapulted so directly and intensely, is that my will was aligned with something that was happening that was really important on a larger scale. And so, you know, once you have stepped into that current, which takes a little more than intention, the thing other than intention that it was required is aptitude, right? But if you have those two things, then you don't need to worry about it. Whatever you need will appear when you need it, to a degree and on a level that is just staggering under the correct circumstances, you know. But again, you know, like in my case, even though it was such a tremendous force, and it was just, it is something that could have mattered, you know, on a larger scale. I had not neutralized the demon of self-sabotage and self-worth to the extent that it didn't matter how much, you know, how many forces were carrying me. There was no chance that I would step through the final gate. But I think I can just get right back on the path, and that's what we're going to talk about tomorrow. So see you there, I hope. Okay, what else we got here? Anybody? All right, well, I don't see any questions or comments or subjects for me to get into, so I am going to get to rehearsing. And please hit the like button, share, subscribe, consider becoming a patron. You get access to lots of stuff. And I'll see you tomorrow. Do make that one, I'm telling you. Even, you know, a lot of you guys have heard, if you're regular subscribers, the Phil Lesh story and a lot of this other stuff. And it's going to be repeated, but in the bigger context and with a lot more like insight, like psychological stuff. And also I've come to some conclusions regarding like my intuitive voice and stuff that I've really been on the fence about for a long time. No longer on the fence about that at all. And I think there's going to be a lot of use and just also some crazy outlaw shit. And, you know, it's going to be wild, and it's going to drain me a lot too. So thank you guys so much, and I will see